everybody knows everybody. I think we all know each other. So let me just see here. There we go. All right. So, well, I'm looking at you guys right now, and thinking that what we have here is the cream of the crop, the highest level of engagement, and so I'm honored that you're here, and we'll record this so that others who couldn't be here because of the change from week 2 to week 3 will be able to access the material. So our topic today is change. And in a little article that I wrote some time ago, I titled it, "Why Are We So Uncomfortable with Change and What Can We Do About It?" We all need to be aware that change triggers our instinct for survival. I got to take a drink here. Be aware of that, that the way you're put together physiologically is that the limbic system in your brain, that's an ancient part of the brain that controls instinct and emotional responses such as fear. Our limbic brain is programmed to keep us alive. And it's always scanning for situations that could harm us. So we have to be aware. And you have to be aware that that's just the way you're built. That's the physiology of it. So that keeps a lot of people from taking the steps to overcome that very natural fear and enter into a new area where they could excel. But because of the way they're built, they let biology hold them back. So be aware again that while feelings drive behavior, it's beliefs and core principles that determine results. And you have to break through that normal physiological resistance to change to get into the open field, if you will, to use a football analogy, where you can actually make some points, make some yardage and score some points. So when resistance to change is triggered by the limbic brain, many people become immobilized and they withdraw into their comfort zone where they feel more in control. In my observation as a business coach, this reluctance to change can prove very counterproductive because it keeps you from accomplishing all that's possible because you're letting biology protect you. Now, the reason I love entrepreneurs so much is they are people, as I've said before to this group, who are willing to jump out of an airplane, believing they can invent a parachute before they hit the ground. And my work, my program, has been developed to help those people recover after they've jumped out of the plane and failed to invent the parachute. Now, some people die. 80% of businesses do close before they're 10 years old. But I'm always looking for the people that we can help to survive. And so part of this process is becoming aware of what you have working against you. Your own physiological nature works against you because it's built to protect you. Like an overbearing parent is looking to protect that kid, never wants them to cross the street, ride their bike in the street, ride your bike on the sidewalk, all of that kind of stuff that is part of the protective instinct of a parent eventually needs to be cast aside so that that youngster can grow and develop. That's what we're talking about here. So this is nothing to be ashamed of. It's your normal physical, psychological, and emotional makeup to cower and stay safe. And during this last year of COVID, everybody says, stay safe. Well, we're built to stay safe. And entrepreneurs, I respect them so much because they're not looking to stay safe. They venture out, they break out of that protective womb, if you will, and they see what they can do about making their dream come true. So the system creates in us feelings, and one feeling that we're dealing with here is fear. My wife is a good example of that. When she was a kid, her dad didn't want her to drive. He wouldn't buy her car. He wouldn't let her drive the car. So she tried to learn to drive, had an accident, just a simple little fender bender. But it created such a resistance in her that she never has learned to drive because of a fear. When I met her, we've been married 50 years in a couple of weeks. And the first 8 days, thanks, that's more to her credit than mine. But we didn't take a vacation for I don't know, maybe 13 years. I couldn't get her to go on a vacation. I couldn't get her to leave the house. And so one time in the news, it was broadcast that the West Coast, California, was about to, when the big earthquake came, California was expected to drop off the cliff and fall into the ocean. And she had grown up watching Walt Disney and had seen on one of their episodes, the Tiki Room, which is a room of tropical birds and animated figures. And she was enthralled with the Tiki Room. And she said to me one day, I'd really like to see the Tiki Room before California falls into the ocean. I said, well, that's fine, but you're going to have to fly. I mean, I only get a week's vacation at that time, and I can't drive out there for 3 days, look at the Tiki Room and turn around and drive back. That just doesn't make sense. So we're going to have to fly. Oh my God, we can't. Nobody in her family had ever gotten on an airplane. So I started to take her out in the evening. We'd go to a drive-in on the south side and have a great cheeseburger and whatever. And then we'd go to the airport and we'd watch airplanes. And she liked that. So we'd watch airplanes, I don't know, it's probably for a year or more. And so I asked her, I said, hi, Brian. I said, how long have we been doing this? And she said, well, about, I don't know, a year or more. And I said, how many times have you seen a plane fall out of the sky? She said, never. I said, well, those are the odds of you're getting where you want to go. It's the safest way of traveling in the world. And one time I did the research, it's like 7 million to 1 that you're going to get to where you want to go. Something like that's the odds, 7 million to 1. I said, with odds like that, you shouldn't be afraid to get on that plane. So she said, okay, I'll do it. I said, do you want to just we'll buy a ticket and fly to Chicago and have dinner and come back, or we'll fly to Minneapolis, have dinner and come back. Want to do that? Want to try that? No, if I'm going to get on the plane, I'm going to go all the way. So I bought the tickets and I said, look, I want to tell you something. If you can't do this, I said, I really appreciate that you're willing to do something that nobody in your family ever told you that you could do. And on top of that, they told her you got to be crazy if you're going to get on an airplane. So she had all this negative programming from a family that had never been on an airplane and never wanted to go on an airplane. So I said, look, if we get there and you can't step onto the plane, I'm not going to make a fuss about it. I'm just going to appreciate that you tried. So turns out that to make it's already too long to be a short story, but she got on the plane, fell in the seat, took off, saw what the birds see when they're in the air, and after that, we flew all over the world. So she had the courage to step out of her comfort zone. As uncomfortable it was, her whole family had programmed her to be where they wanted her to be safe, but On the other hand, she wouldn't have seen places in the world that she's gotten to see until she overcame that fear. Same thing for everybody. So I say to everybody, look on the upside and expect a quick change for the better. Because things can turn around quickly for the better. And I say times of change are times of opportunity. When things change, they can change for the better. And they can change quickly. So don't cheat yourself of the upside that's possible by being afraid or worried that the worst is going to happen. And as Tom mentioned before, you can't stop change. It's inevitable. We've been changing since day one. And all we do is cheat ourselves of the better outcomes that are possible if we would just look beyond and be willing to take the risk. So here's my analysis. We have three choices when it comes to dealing with change. One is resist a change and withdraw into your comfort zone. I call this the BMW club, the bitchers, moaners, and whiners, the people who complain that things aren't the way they used to be. And they withdraw into the comfort zone and they stay there. But no growth occurs in your comfort zone. You're not growing then. Growth only occurs when you get outside your comfort zone and take a chance. Now, a more positive choice would be to step out of that comfort zone and discover what Napoleon Hill, the author of the book Think and Grow Rich, says: discover your other self. Your other self is the person that emerges when you face a problem or a crisis or adversity that challenges you to the limit. And then your other self emerges and you figure out the next step. And that's all you need to do, is figure out the next step. And that next step leads you to a better outcome. And I contend that there is always a better outcome. Doesn't matter who you are, where you are, how much money you have, what you've accomplished, what you can boast about. Better is always possible. Option two of what the possibilities are for how to deal with change are to just passively accept the change and let it roll over you. Or as a song from the Doris Day sang many years ago, que sera, sera, whatever, que sera, sera, whatever will be, will be.
The future
we have
ours to see. The future's not ours to see. That's
right. Yeah,
line.
That's right.
Thanks.
But the future is ours to make.
Mm-hmm.
Based on what you decide. And option three is to get out in front and lead the charge, lead the change, and become the change that you want to see in your life, in your business, in your family, in your church, in your community, in the world. Or as business people in your industry. If you look within your own industry, you will find a company that is knocking it out of the park. They're in your same business, you're suffering or you're struggling, and they're knocking out of the park in the same business. Well, they're obviously doing something that you're not doing. And when you find out what that is, and then you do it too, you get better. So I mentioned before that you can be the change you want to happen in the world, in your community, in your church. But when I mentioned church, I wanted to mention to you that I've just become a sponsor of and the official business acceleration coach for a group called C-Suite for Christ. This is a group of 1,600 Christian-owned business owners. Thank you, Christian-owned business owners who are looking to bring Christ-like principles into their business, which thrills me because our businesses should be platforms for delivering value and they can be platforms for bringing hope and change and value into people's lives. And who's a better example of that than Christ? So it's an honor to be a part of that group, and I invite you to join it if you'd like. I can get that information to you. They meet once a month on the third Wednesday of the month, and the meetings are highly inspirational. And you get to meet a lot of business owners who, as Simon Sinek said, don't do business with people who need what you sell. Do business with people who believe what you believe. And when you're in that room with Christian business owners, you know that you share a fundamental belief that there is a higher power, and that our work should be part of the greatness that we are destined to become if we live the life that Christ put us here to live. So that kind of all rolls into this. I want to go back to or refer to another great personal development coach, Zig Ziglar, who's gone to his reward, but he is famous for saying your attitude determines your altitude. Your attitude determines your altitude. So, so in that regard, I want to bring in to the table the idea that your subconscious brain cannot distinguish between facts. It doesn't know if something's true or not. It just takes what it's fed and it acts on it. So that means what you believe has a lot to do with how you grow, whether you grow, and what you grow into. And it also means that we have a phenomenal ability to control the outcome of our lives. If you're feeding your brain with negative information, you can expect a negative outcome. If you think lack, you're going to get more lack. If you think abundance, you'll be amazed at how abundance comes into your life. I believe that that's where God resides in each of us, in our brain, not our heart. Because God never sleeps, and the brain, the subconscious brain, never sleeps. Your heart never stops beating. You never stop breathing, and you never stop thinking or processing information. The brain never sleeps. So if you can program your self-conscious mind to believe in abundance, then 24/7, your mind will be working to bring to you the resources that will make that abundance real in your life. That's what I believe. Your attitude determines your altitude. So this means that we get to decide our outcome, that we all have the power to decide how we want this to turn out. And parents, overbearing parents who overprotect their kids, never get the chance to believe in themselves, which is a tragedy. Your subconscious mind can be programmed to bring resources into your life, whether it's money, people, whatever resources you need are out there available. And all you need to do is connect with people who believe what you believe, and they make those things available to you. Another way of saying the same thing is that if you program your mind to think abundance, you get abundance. Or think money, you get more money. If you think lack, you're always looking for the next buck to pay the bills. You get what you decide to think about. So this brings me to something that I say to every one of my coaching clients, is that the world changes when you decide. The world changes when you decide. So don't shortchange yourself by thinking too small. You were built for greatness, and you have the power to become more than you ever imagined you could be, simply by controlling the thoughts you think. I don't listen to very much radio because in the car I'm thinking, and I don't want to surrender that thinking time to somebody who's jabbering on the radio or music that's playing on the radio, and then somebody else is controlling what I think.
Good point. Good point.
So I can drive 100 miles and not have the radio on, and I'm going to enjoy looking at the surroundings, and I'm going to enjoy thinking. And it's time when I can connect to God if I want to talk to Him. And and I can listen if he wants to talk to me. So a high payoff activity is to decide today on the outcome that you want. Decide today and write it down. Write down the plan that lays out the steps that you need to take to get what you want. And the third step is take action. So every one of my clients gets a little sheet that says the billionaire's to-do list. And the question it asks is, what will I do today to ensure that I reach my optimum goal, financial goal, professional goal, whatever it is? What will I do today that will get me closer to what I want than I was yesterday? Success is not an event, it is a process. It's a process of stringing together a series of successful days, which is why at the beginning every day, we have the option to ask ourselves, what will I do today to ensure that I reach my optimal financial goal of whatever that is? And at the end of the day, you can hold yourself accountable by asking, what did I do today that moved me closer to my goal? And to know that you either did or you didn't. And if you didn't, and you're not so tired you have to go to bed yet, you can still do something. So we have this self-regulating process that can keep us on track so that we string together a series of successful days that make a successful week, that turn into a successful month, that turns into a successful year. We have that power, but most people don't use it. So again, the three things are: decide what you want, create the plan to get it, and then take action. Take action to make it real. So now let's look at, that's the general template for how you can deal with change effectively. And you can do something today. When I'm talking to my clients, I say, we want to do something that you can, we want to arrive at something, I call it a high payoff activity, that you can do today. And then you go do it, you get a good result and you feel great, and you do, and now you're a believer. And now you can start to do that every day. And that's how people go from working way too hard for the money they make to being able to say, the less I do, the more I make, because now their every day counts in the process of getting what they want. They succeed at getting what they want. They feel juiced by that, and they make that their mindset. Mm-hmm. Now they believe they can do it. And it's amazing what happens when people believe they can do something. And so then they go out and do it, and then that gets them more excited. And now we have people that are engaged in using change to make the world, their reality, what they want it to be, rather than what somebody else. Because if you don't decide what you want to be, somebody else decide what you're going to be. And we're in that process right now with the government, which is which our government has gone from a government of the people, by the people, and for the people, of a government of elites who want to tell everybody what they can have, what they can do, and how much they can have. And that, to an old guy like me, is nothing less than heresy. I mean, I hate this. So let's look at some of the areas where change could be affecting you, and then think about what you could decide to do if you wanted to. We have business to deal with. We have a business that we need to make profitable. We have political and economic change being forced on us. We have financial changes being forced on it. So I want to read from an article that I got recently about one of the changes that's in our economy right now. And I'm just reading now. So some economists have theorized that extended enhanced unemployment benefits with a ban on evictions created a shortage of workers as the economy bounced back. With both those provisions recently expired or overturned, The next couple of months will provide a better understanding of the degree to which these factors were disincentivizing potential workers from returning to the workforce. Everywhere I go, there's help wanted signs. And everywhere I go, every business I go into, the lack of enthusiasm for being there is very apparent. I love to work. I love to find a way to bring value to the people I'm working with. It lights me up. I don't see that very often. And when I see it, I make sure that I compliment it because I want people to be encouraged. And that could be the guy that carries bags of birdseed out of Menards and load them in my car. It could be somebody at the drive-through window at Culver's if I'm having lunch or whatever. I want to compliment people who I see have an attitude that portrays customer delight, that they're delighted that you are there at their business. And so I hope that one of the actions you'll take is to compliment anybody you see that is delighting you with their service, because it'll encourage them to delight others. And when their service disappoints you, take the time to go and find the manager or the owner of that place and let them know that you're not happy. And I always tell people when I do that, look, I'm not trying to be difficult, but I'm a business owner and a business coach. And I know that nothing gets better if the top person doesn't know something's not working. So my spirit is always one, I want you to know that this didn't work for me. And you know, you can decide what to do about it, but I just feel it's always my obligation to thank somebody when they do a great job and to let somebody know when they don't, because that's the only way a business gets better. So anyway, while it may be one variable in the worker shortage, and likely it's the only variable, additional factors such as unplanned retirements, health concerns, a mismatch between employer needs and workforce skills, lifestyle changes, and a rise in self-employed individuals are likely at work in the shortage of workers. Our current worker shortage has forced employers to raise pay and enhance benefits to retain or attract employees. Most have passed these additional costs along to their customers with higher prices. So we are seeing inflation in the workplace right now. We are paying more for crappier service. Well, you can have a part to play in making sure it gets better if the owner of that business knows, because they know that if you step up and say something, they know there's 10 more people who are afraid to come in and talk about it. Now, if employers can't find enough employees to fill their needs, then they must reduce production, slow the service, limit their hours. This limit on supply in the face of persistent consumer demand can create both inconvenience and higher prices. The next few months will give us an indication of whether our current worker shortage will continue indefinitely, or whether generous federal unemployment benefits were motivating potential workers to stay at home. In return, this will give us clues on whether inflation growth will remain strong or return to prior year levels. So one of the changes that's been forced upon us is inflation. We had a session a few months ago on inflation. More money chasing fewer goods. More money chasing fewer goods. At that time, I said that I went back and checked to see what I was making when we got married in 1971, and what how many dollars would be required today to buy the same thing that $12,000 a year bought in 1971. So crazy, but I was making $12,000 a year in 1971. Now I make $12,000 a month in a crappy month. And my life doesn't feel that different. So when I checked, I found out that it takes $78,2021 to buy the same thing that $12,1971 bought. 6 times, a little over 6 times. So I remember a house that I sold when I was in the real estate business for $60,000, probably in 1980. I think that's when I was a realtor, is worth 250 today. That's a 4 times increase. Maybe that house is worth 300,000. So maybe it's a 5 times increase. So the real estate values is not that the cost of the house went up, but the value of the dollars that buy it have gone down.
Mhm.
It's important to know that the value of the dollars is going down because of the government imposed inflation. So now let's decide what we could do about that. Our 3 options. One, we could just say, well, que sera, sera. What can you do? Some people decided to go with the party in power that wants to be the source of income for everyone so that they can control you by taking away the money if you don't do the things that the government wants. Again, that's an anathema to me. I'm used to doing what I like to do, what I want to do, how I want to do it. I'm stubborn, I'm old, and all of that stuff applies, but I'm a freedom freak. I want people to be able to decide how their life turns out. I want them to be in control of their life. I don't want the government to control their life. And I'm not saying there aren't good things about government, but we have a lot of what has happened over the years is that we've gone from public service into having public service feed the incomes of, we have a lot of 80-year-old multi-millionaires in government right now, and where the government is serving them rather than them serving us.
I agree.
So we could get involved and start to speak up and start to register our complaints to them so they know, just like I do with the drive-through if they screw up my order. Yesterday they had or Tuesday they had a recall election in California, and the incumbent governor kept his position, but he probably got a little religion. We need to speak up, and I'm going to encourage you and beg of you that you speak up. That could be calling your state senator, it could be calling your alderman, it could be calling the governor's office, it could be calling your senator or your representative to let them know that you like or dislike something, because they know that if they hear from somebody, there's 100 people out there that didn't call who feel the same way. So these people are very sensitive to public input. They pretty much do whatever they want, but if they don't know how you feel, you can't expect that they will ever do anything differently. And our move toward a centralized government that controls everything is something that will roll over us unless some people push back. So I'm begging of you to take an active part in pushing back. Okay, then we have, that's one suggestion, that number one, let people know what you think, take control, let your beliefs be known, and the people who share those beliefs will eventually gravitate to you, and you'll become an influencer of a higher level of thought and a higher level of output because you raised your level of input. You guys on this call and in the EIB organization are really head and shoulders above the average citizen. You care, you put on a line every day, you make your businesses work. You know what it's like to struggle, because everybody has to struggle at some point. And you have persevered. You have stayed alive. You have grown. And so I really look at you as the cream of the crop in terms of the hope that we have of eventually turning this around. And I can get really discouraged when I look at the news, which I don't do usually. And I see this move toward collectivism and socialism and all of that. your life as an independent business owner depends on the survival of the capitalistic system. And yes, it's true that some will survive, or will thrive beyond any number that you can imagine. There are going to be billionaires created, and you and I aren't billionaires, but it doesn't mean that we couldn't be if we did some things differently. So
Chuck,
anyway, yeah.
Can I just make a real quick comment on what you said?
Absolutely.
About bring
Please
it
do.
to the attention of the business owner or politician, whatever the case may be, is that we got to be willing to accept and take that feedback from our constituents, our customers, in the same light.
Yeah.
It's not a one-way street. So we got to be open to deal with an issue that could either improve us or bury us. So I just wanted to make that comment.
Okay. Well, then that kind of speaks to that statement that times of change are times of opportunity. Now, I'm rushing ahead here, but one of the things that Napoleon Hill says in his book, Think and Grow Rich, and he says it again, he wrote a whole book about it called Outwitting the Devil. And that is, every challenge, every adversity contains within it the seeds of an equivalent, or greater outcome. So every mother knows the pain of childbirth, and yet she would gladly bring another child into the world, because the pain, ask any mother, is worth it. Well, in our businesses, the pain is worth it. But we have to have the right attitude about transforming that pain or that struggle or that adversity into its equivalent or greater outcome. That's the opportunity that we have every time we face a challenge or an obstacle, or we're going through adversity. Let's look at some financial considerations, because that's another area where change is being thrust upon us. And I want you all to win this game. I tell people in the area of credit, finance, or business, I coach people to win the game. Unemployment rate has fallen to 5.4%, but there's no doubt that many jobs in the service sector fell victim to the pandemic. They aren't coming back, but that doesn't mean we don't have jobs. We currently have nearly 10 million jobs openings and 9 million people unemployed. This is a classic example of structural unemployment, where the people available either aren't qualified for or don't live near the job openings. And no amount of central bank bond buying will change this. As for inflation, Powell acknowledged, the head of the Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell acknowledged that the central bank's goal of rising prices has been met. I guess so. But then went back to describing the current price trends as transitory. It's likely that used car prices will fall back to earth and that the supply bottlenecks created by the pandemic will ease. But that won't address the rising rents that will follow the 20% rise in home prices or the rising costs of food and energy. Oh, wait, that's right. We don't count food and energy in inflation numbers because they aren't core prices. And that's how the government manipulates the reported inflation rate. They don't count the things that you and I are feeling every day. And my wife has a word for that: bastards. Well, wait, that's right. We don't count food and energy and inflation because they aren't core prices, even though they are the very things we need every day. The Fed's easy monetary policy is supposed to generate more economic activity by making loans cheaper and therefore encouraging borrowing. That's not happening. Banks are not lending right now. They have billions in reserves at the Federal Reserve, but instead of lending it out, they're not. Why? Because they see trouble on the horizon that's going to make it difficult for some of these new borrowers to pay back the money. So they're not lending. That's the way money normally got into circulation, was that banks loaned their reserves, put the money in your bank account, you spend it, and now we have money in circulation. That has been the normal means of getting money into circulation. Since Jerome Powell and since Ben Bernanke before him at the Federal Reserve, quantitative easing has become the norm, which is called modern monetary theory, where the Fed just prints money and puts it directly into the hands of people, no banks involved. So the stimulus checks you got last year, the tax credit money that you're getting right now, if you have children and you're getting so much a month for each one, that's just a credit against your tax return next year. But they're putting the money directly into your account as opposed to going through a bank. And that has made it possible for them to balloon the federal deficit from 4 million to 8 million. Trillion. So this is scary stuff. We've never been here before. The Fed's easy monetary policy is supposed to generate more economic activity by making loans cheaper and therefore encouraging borrowing, but it's not happening. Bank loans sit at about where they were before the pandemic, even though bank deposits have increased by trillions. People are saving since the pandemic something between 20 and 30% of their income. Normal is maybe 2 to 5%. And there have been many times when the savings rate was negative. So people aren't spending money the way they did, and banks aren't lending money the way they did. We are headed for an economic catastrophe. Hasn't happened yet, but it's going to happen. The extra funds sit at the Fed in the form of excess reserves, doing nothing but clogging the financial system without more lending. Without more lending, the bond buying won't create more jobs, but the extra dollars have an effect somewhere else. They inflate financial asset prices. The price of every stock on the market is now at an all-time high versus, I got to think, what is it? Versus the amount of money in circulation. The value of the stocks, the aggregate value of stocks on the stock exchange, all the stock exchanges, is a multiple, the highest multiple ever compared to the amount of money in circulation. As long as the Fed keeps the digital printing presses running, interest rates will remain low no matter what happens to inflation, which keeps real interest rates negative. And so I said to somebody, and I'll share this, in terms of interest rates, so that you can make the right decisions in this face of change. So I have a client, he's the pastor of a church, and they're buying a new church. And he said, we'd like to go ahead with this, but the interest rate is 6%. Banks won't give them money because they're uncomfortable lending to churches because they're not sure that the contributions will stay at the level that they need to be to pay back a multi-million-dollar loan. But he has a company other than a bank that's willing to lend the money, but the rate is 6%. And I said, well, there are two interest rates. One is the nominal rate. That's the rate that's on the loan document. And secondly, is the real rate. The real rate is the interest rate, the nominal interest rate, plus or minus the rate of inflation. So right now, the inflation rate is running about 5.7%. The rate they're asking you to pay is 6%, but inflation is lowering the value of the dollar by 5.7%. So your real interest rate is 0.3%. So if I'm you, I'm not telling you what to do, but if I'm you, I want to grow my church because it's in an area where I can get more members, increase the revenue coming into the church, and I can lend money for a real rate of less than 0.5%. Just show me where to sign. But there's something that this guy didn't know. He didn't understand the difference between real rates and nominal rates. So if you refinance your mortgage recently and you have a rate of 3% on your mortgage and inflation is 5.7, you're really getting a minus 2.7% rate on your mortgage. Because if the dollars that you're paying every month stay the same, the amount of the loan was fixed when you bought the house, your interest rate, you're doing exactly what the government does. They borrow money and if they ever pay it back, it's minimized by the fact that inflation makes the dollars that they have to pay it back with worth less. So the government has an ingrained bias toward lowering the value of the money that you have in your bank account or your pocket. So from the standpoint of buying a house, understand that the interest rate you pay, the real rate will be whatever rate you can get less the rate of inflation. So this is a good time. This is a good time to owe money. When this shifts to deflation, that'll be a bad time to owe money. That's the time to pay off your mortgage. Right now is a good time to owe money. So anyway, let's see here if I can change this again. There we are. Okay. All right. Now, one of the other areas, and we have some gray hair on the call today. So the issue of inflation affects retirement benefits. So there's a change that's being forced upon us that one could feel there's nothing I can do about it. But right now we have our current president proposing the highest interest rates that we have seen, highest tax rates that we have seen in a long time. So a lot of your money, or at least some of the value of your money, is drained away by inflation. And a lot more of it is drained away by taxes. So one of the most important things I can do as an advisor is help people avoid taxes legally or minimize their taxes minimally. So we have changes that are in the market, like a declining value of $1 issued by a government that has no financial responsibility whatsoever to care how much they owe. The fact that they're flooding the market with printed dollars means that the value of your assets looks like they're going up, but the dollars that they're going up, the inflated asset prices, are really negated by the fact that those dollars are worth less. And eventually those dollars are likely to become worthless, not just worth less, but worthless. So one of the things you can do is to put some of your assets, at least a percentage of them, into something that has never gone to zero value. And that would, for me, that's gold and silver. If you have a portion of your assets in gold and silver, you will have some of your assets invested in something that throughout history has never gone to zero value. But there are hundreds of currencies over the years, over the centuries, that have gone to zero value. And the federal government's dollar is one that's headed in that direction because of the idiots we have in Washington that will not put a brake on spending. So that's one issue. So you could own some precious metals so that you have a portion of your assets invested in something that will not go to zero when the ship hits the sand. That's one thing you can do. That's a choice. So you can let this all wash over you and have your retirement account diminished, not only by inflation, but by the fact that when you take that money out of that retirement account, it's going to be taxed. And the tax rates are headed higher, which means less of your retirement account is really going to be available to you to spend to support your life. What can you do? Avoid taxes legally. Invest in some assets that never go to zero. And then wait for this whole rat's nest to implode, and then take some of the money that you'll have because the gold and silver has gone up in value and buy into income producing assets that can pay for your retirement. That's kind of that's the strategy that I'm following. I hate to say that I'm looking forward to the collapse because I've positioned myself to benefit from it. I can't stop the collapse. If I could, I would. But I don't think I can.
Chuck,
Yeah,
I like that philosophy, but one of the things I do in my consulting and my coaching is how to create to offset inflation and taxes. You've got to create an asset that will outpace inflation and taxes. And I show people how to build an asset, $1 million asset in 2 to 3 years, not accumulated asset of $1 million, but produces an income that will outpace inflation. So there are solutions besides, hey, if you haven't got the assets to buy gold and silver, what's the next step? So I can get residual income and build that residual income in a 1 to 2 year period, and it comes every month and it outpaces it. So that's a strategy that
okay, sure. And it's a very legitimate one, because if you have $1 million and it throws off 5%, that's $50,000 a year.
Yeah.
So if you don't have the $1 million, what can you do to generate $50,000 a year? Then you will be as well off as if you had the $1 million, and you can accumulate wealth that eventually can be invested in could be an annuity, could be whatever it is that pays you the money that you need to survive every month. So that's very good point. So
yeah, and
that's
also that type of asset, if it's properly set up in the right entities, it is sellable. So it has a value that you can turn into the marketplace and even get greater value than the monthly off of it. So anyway, I didn't want to take.
I'm really glad you added that. So then the other strategy would be, if you don't have employees, and I know Nancy doesn't, and I know Tom doesn't, and I don't, and Brian doesn't, and Mike does, and James doesn't. I don't think James has employees. You can set up what's called a solo 401k, which has no fees associated with management or transactions. That entity can hold your business, and the money that grows inside that simple 401k will never be taxed. Never be taxed. So these are a few ideas where you can turn the tables on inflation, turn the tables on unemployment, turn the tables on the move of our government toward a centralized social dictatorship, if you will, and surround yourself with strategies that protect your money, give you the availability to spend enough money that keeps your lifestyle in place, no matter what happens. That's taking the change that's thrust upon us and turning it into a better result. And so I hope I've gotten some wheels turning, that you don't feel victimized by change, but you realize that better outcomes are possible, and that you need to do some research, and you need to collaborate with people in our group that can help you. We have a guy who's not on the call this morning, but his name is Mike McDermott. He can help you set up a solo 401k. Tom can show you how to put some money into that business that has that simple 401k that will never be taxed again. So then for that portion of your assets, you don't have to care how high taxes go. Now, I'll finish with this example that I've used before, but it's a perfect way to end. If I give you $1 and you could double it 20 times before you retire, that single dollar will turn into $1,070,000. $1 into $1,070,000 by doubling it 20 times. If I give you another dollar, and now that you know how to double it 20 times, you do that, but this time we're going to take 25% out for taxes. Now, instead of having $1,070,000 from $1, you'll have $77,000. So which would you rather have, $1,070,000 or $77,000? I can show you how to double your money 20 times. We have somebody in the group can show you how to keep it from being taxed. You've got a formula now for building a future for you that, however bleak it is for the rest of the world, yours will be bright and sunny. And that's the best I can hope to do for anybody. is to help their outcome become one of positive financial growth and preservation in the face of a centralized government that's printing money faster than it can be repaid. We have reached the point, by the way, where the federal debt can never be repaid. If it didn't go up from here, it'll never be repaid. That means there's going to be default along the way, and the people are going to lose money. So protect yourself. Now you know a couple of ideas of how to do that. And I hope you've gotten something from this that encourages you to know that you can make a difference for yourself and for others. That's all I've got for today, Tom.
Great job. We're going to go back on schedule the second Thursday of the month. The only reason we moved it to the third was I was in a business conference down in Tennessee, and so we moved it to this date. So this is recorded. I will get a YouTube conversion to everybody and those that aren't here to get the whole message. Encourage you to share our second Thursday of every month with other colleagues, other businesses, because our whole objective with EIB, and it's always been from the beginning, like Chuck says, is just to helping businesses improve where they are and where they want to go. So we all have value here. It's a great opportunity to share what you do with other people. So don't hesitate to reach out to anybody. So with that all said, everybody make it a great day. Don't have a great day. Make it.
Yeah, you have the ability to make it great, not only for you, but for the people around you. And that's a great way to spend your life.
Yes. So
thanks, everybody.
We'll see everybody next month.
Thanks, you guys.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Thanks for being here, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you. Thanks, Chuck. Thanks, Thomas.
You got it.